My introduction to American high school wasn't faces or classrooms, but noise. In India, my school had been noisy too, girls chattering in Hindi, teachers calling out homework in strict voices, but this was different. The hallways here sounded like a storm made of lockers slamming and sneakers squeaking and English words flying too fast for me to catch. I stood in the middle of the corridor clutching my schedule, while bodies moved around me like a river that knew where it was going. I did not. A tall boy brushed past me and muttered, "Move, dude," even though I was clearly not a dude. A group of girls laughed at something on their phones, heads bent together like petals, the light from the screen glowing on their faces. Somewhere, a bell rang that I didn't know how to follow. I took a breath, the kind my mother told me to take when panic rose. "Just walk, Anya," I whispered to myself. Left, then right. Room 214. My Indian middle name at the end, Kumari, was on every document, but here it felt too heavy. At the office they had already cut my full name down, like trimming a branch from a tree. "It's Anya," the woman behind the counter had said. "It's Anya," I had corrected softly. Like, in, car, dot. She nodded vaguely. "Okay, Anya. Welcome to Westfield High." I didn't correct her a second time. Room 214 was Algebra 2. I found it after taking two wrong turns and pretending I was just casually passing by, when people raised their eyebrows at me. When I finally pushed the door open, 20 faces turned at once. It felt like stepping onto a stage where I did not know my lines. The teacher, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and a cardigan that had tiny pumpkins on it, paused with a marker in midair. "Oh, you must be our new student." She smiled. "Come in, sweetheart. What's your name again?" "Ah." She looked down at her paper. Anya Kumar, I." A few kids snickered. I felt the heat climb up my neck. "Anya," I said. I wanted my voice to sound clear, but it came out thin. "Just Anya." "Ahnya," she repeated, mispronouncing it again. "Welcome. I'm Mrs. Phillips. Class, say hi." There was a lazy chorus of, "Hey," and "Hi," and one long sarcastic, "Hey," from the back. "You can sit." She looked around the room. "Next to Emma." "Emma, raise your hand." A blonde girl with perfect eyeliner raised two fingers without looking away from her phone. I walked to the empty desk beside her, my backpack heavy on one shoulder, my whole body aware of how my braids swung, how my shoes squeaked differently from theirs. As I sat, Emma glanced at me, eyes moving quickly over my face, my simple pant shirt blue with tiny flowers, my large, unfamiliar lunchbox. "Nice costume," she muttered. "It's not a costume," I said before I could stop myself. She smirked, didn't reply, and went back to texting. The period passed slowly. Algebra, at least, was familiar. Numbers didn't care about accents. When Mrs. Phillips asked the class to solve an equation on the board and no one raised their hand, mine almost went up by instinct. Back in India, I had been the girl who knew the answers. Teachers called me topper and smart girl. I could feel the solution sitting in my brain like a bright fruit ready to be picked. But when I looked around the room, at the boy in the hoodie staring at me, at the girl with pink hair whispering to her friend as she tilted her phone in my direction, I shrank. Let someone else answer, I thought. Nobody did. Mrs. Phillips sighed, solved it herself, and moved on. I stared at the neat lines of numbers, my chest tight with a strange new feeling. I wasn't just new. I was scared to be smart. Lunch was worse. The cafeteria smelled like pizza and fries, and something sweet that reminded me of birthday parties. There was a machine that made soft, humming noises and gave out cold drinks in colorful cans. Students moved in clumps, athletes in sports jackets, kids dressed in all black, boys with loud laughter, girls with perfect hair. In my old school, there had been groups too, nerds, gossip girls, sports kids, but we all spoke the same language, complained about the same teachers, ate similar food. Here, everything looked like a movie I had not seen from the beginning. I held my tray, milk carton, apple, something called mac and cheese, I wasn't sure I could eat, and scanned the room for an empty table. There was one near the window, but as I walked toward it, two girls swooped in and slid their trays down, claiming the space like birds claiming a branch. I changed direction awkwardly, almost bumping into a boy. "Watch it, curry," he snapped, stepping back dramatically. His friends laughed. The word hit me like a small slap. Curry. I knew it as just food. In his mouth, it became an insult. Sorry, I managed, going red. I found a table in the corner with only one other person, a skinny boy with messy dark hair who was reading a fantasy novel and eating slowly, as if he had all the time in the world. "Can I sit here?" I asked. He looked up, blinked behind his glasses, and shrugged. "Free country." I sat, opened my tiffin box from home under the table. My mother packed a paratha and a small steel container of mango pickle. The smell was heaven to me. And probably strange here. I hesitated. Taking a deep breath, I took a small bite. Warm, spicy, familiar. For a moment, my throat hurt with homesickness. I imagined my mother standing in our tiny kitchen that morning, hair tied up, flour on her hands, rolling the parathas while the New Jersey sky outside still looked half asleep. "Eat well," she had said. "You will need strength." Now, across from the noisy cafeteria, I heard a voice. "Ew, what is that smell?" A girl at a nearby table scrunched up her nose. Another leaned in. "Is someone eating, like, curry or something?" My heart dropped. I wanted to disappear. My fingers snapped the tiffin lid shut so quickly I almost caught my skin. The boy across from me glanced at my lunchbox, then at me. For a second, I thought he would say something mean too. Instead, he just stabbed another piece of his pizza and said, "Smells good to me." But the damage was done. The girls were still whispering. A boy pulled his t-shirt over his nose theatrically. I spent the rest of lunch chewing tiny bites of mac and cheese that felt like glue in my mouth. The bullying didn't start with punches or shoved shoulders in the hallway. It started with small things. Giggles when I walked past. People mimicking my accent behind my back, overpronouncing syllables, bobbing their heads in an exaggerated way. "Welcome to America," a boy said once, nudging his friend, when I read out loud in English class. "Say, water," again, another insisted, laughing when I said, "water," instead of, "water." Even teachers sometimes moved past my raised hand, afraid I might not understand the question yet, though I had understood every single word. Then there were the phones. Once, in gym class, I dropped the basketball clumsily, and it bounced off in a ridiculous direction. Someone filmed it. Later, I found a clip circulating on a student group chat, my face in slow motion as the ball escaped my hands, text over it saying, "Imported skills Lamau." That night, I locked myself in the bathroom, turned the tap on so nobody would hear, and cried until my eyes hurt. At home, my parents tried to help, but their world was different. "You are there to study, not to impress anyone," Baba said, looking up from the classifieds where he was searching for accounting jobs that matched his Indian qualifications. "Ignore them. They are children," Amma added. "You are strong. You have faced so much already, moving to a new country. This will pass." But it didn't pass. It grew. One afternoon, we had to do a group project in computer class. Each group had to design a simple game using a visual programming tool. Back in India, I had done a little bit of Scratch programming at a summer camp. I liked the logic of it, The way you could tell a machine exactly what to do and it listened, without judgment. Groups of 4. Our teacher, Mr. Henderson, said. I want a mix of skills, people. Don't just clump with your best buddies. 3 girls immediately joined hands like forming a human shield. 4 boys swung their backpacks onto the same table. My heart sunk. I hated the feeling of being the leftover piece. Then Mr. Henderson looked around and said, You 4 at the back, yeah, you, and Anya. Work together, please. So, I ended up with 3 boys from my algebra class, hoodie, baseball cap, and tall blonde whose names I still hadn't fully learned. We sat at a table, the others spinning on their chairs. So, curry girl, hoodie said, tapping a pencil on the desk, can you code? His friends snickered. I swallowed. A little. Great. He grinned. You can do the nerd stuff. We'll handle. Creative direction. That meant they spent most of the period talking about a party someone had gone to and occasionally leaning over to say, make it like. When you kill the alien, there's, like, blood everywhere. I focused on the screen, dragging and dropping blocks of code. Movement, collision, score. The simple logic calmed me. Here, rules made sense. If something didn't work, it was because I had done something specific, and I could fix it. By the end of the week, we had a working game. The little alien moved when you pressed the arrow keys, a spaceship fired laser beams, the score increased. It wasn't beautiful, but it worked. On presentation day, Hoodie jumped up before I could speak. We made this, he said proudly. I had this idea for the game, and then we all, coded it together. He didn't look at me. My name was not mentioned. Mr. Henderson watched the demo, nodding. Nice work. Who wrote the code? I did most of it, Hoodie said without a blink. But we helped. His friend raised his hand lazily to support the lie. In that moment, something hot and unfamiliar rose inside me, hotter than embarrassment, different from the usual shame. Anger. I glanced at the code on the screen. In the corner, still visible, was the username we had to log in with, mine. Actually, I heard my own voice say, I wrote it. The boys froze. The class went quiet. Even I was surprised by myself. I had done similar games before, I continued, my heart thudding. They gave ideas, but the coding. It's mine. Mr. Henderson raised his eyebrows. Slowly, he walked to the computer, clicked through some screens. My username was everywhere. He looked at the boys, then at me. Well, he said at last, then excellent work, Anya. This is clean logic. I would like to talk to you after class about joining our coding club. The boys shifted uncomfortably. Hoodie glanced at me with narrow eyes. After class, when everyone was leaving, he brushed past me hard enough to jolt my shoulder. Snitch, he muttered. I just told the truth, I said quietly. Something changed that day. The bullying didn't stop, but a new path opened up. Coding club became my refuge. We meet twice a week in the computer lab after school. The harsh fluorescent lights that made the room look like a clinic during the day became softer as the sun set outside. The rows of computers hummed gently, lined up like patient animals waiting to be taught tricks. There were only 10 of us. Some were quiet, some loud. A girl named Zoe with short purple hair loved designing art for games. A boy called Louise was obsessed with cybersecurity. The skinny boy from the cafeteria, whose name, I learned, was Noah, was there too, always half-hidden behind a hoodie but quick with suggestions. Nobody laughed at my accent here. When I wrote working code, they nodded with real respect. Nice function, Louise would say, peering at my screen. That's efficient. This animation is sick, Zoe would add. Can you show me how you did that loop? In coding club, my difference was an advantage. I had used different apps, learned in a different syllabus, thought about problems slightly differently. Where in the hallway my weirdness made me a target, here it made me interesting. Mr. Henderson saw it too. You have a good brain for this, Anya, he told me one evening when most others had already left. You spot patterns fast. Have you ever thought about computer science as a career? Career. The word felt big. At home, my parents and relatives had always said, doctor, or engineer, as if those were the only doors that existed. I like it, I said. It feels peaceful. He smiled. Peaceful is an unusual word for it, but yes. If you are interested, I can help you find some online courses. And next year, there's a regional coding competition. You could try. When I walked home that day, the sky was turning pink over the rows of similar houses. For the first time since arriving in America, I felt something other than fear crawling under my skin. I felt possibility. The bullying, of course, did not magically vanish. There were still whispers when my father picked me up in his old sedan and spoke English with a strong accent at the car window. There were still snickers when I wore a kurti to school on Diwali, even though it made me feel close to home. Hey, Bollywood, someone called once. You going to sing in the hallway? There were still days when my lunch ended up half-eaten because I was too conscious of the smell. Days when I stared at myself in the bathroom mirror, hating my brown skin, my dark hair, my thick eyebrows, wishing I could peel them off and put on a new face like changing a profile picture. But alongside those days, there were new ones. Days when I solved a hard problem in math before anyone else. Days when Zoe sent me a text saying, "You saved my butt on that game bug. Thanks, Anya, you are a legend." Days when Noah quietly slid into the seat beside me at lunch without asking and just started talking about a new science fiction book, treating my presence as normal, not foreign. Once, I overheard two boys in the hallway. "Dude, that Indian girl is in my programming class," one said. "She's scary smart." "Yeah," the other replied. "Henderson keeps talking about her code like it's the second coming or something." They laughed, but it was not a cruel laugh this time. There was something like respect in it. A strange thought came to me. If they can be loud about my mistakes, I can be quietly proud of my strengths. In 10th grade, Mr. Henderson signed me up for the regional coding competition almost without asking. "It'll be good for you," he said when I protested weakly about not being ready. "You've been hiding in this lab long enough. Time to let the world see what you can do." The competition was held at a nearby college. Dozens of teenagers from different districts filled a large hall, all of us hunched over keyboards when the problems appeared on the screen. At first my hands shook. The English in the problem descriptions seemed too fast, too many words around the simple heart of the logic. But then something inside me settled. It was just like the lab. Just me and the code. I started to piece solutions together. Loop here. Condition there. Edge cases. Test. Debug. Try again. 4 hours later, my brain felt like it had run a marathon. When they announced the winners, I sat with my hands in my lap, ready to clap for whoever it was. In 3rd place, the announcer said, "From Lincoln High School." Clap. Clap. In 2nd place, from Eastview Academy. More clapping. In 1st place. I wasn't thinking about myself at all. I was wondering what we would eat for dinner, whether Amma had managed to find fenugreek leaves at the Indian store, when I heard it. From Westfield High School. Anya Kumari Singh. For a second, I didn't move. Had I heard wrong? Then I felt Mr. Henderson's hand on my shoulder, pushing me gently. "Go," he whispered. "That's you." The walk to the stage felt like moving through water. People were clapping. Some kids were looking at me with curiosity, others with something sharper. I took the certificate with both hands. The paper felt unreal. On it, my name looked different from how it sounded in their mouths, but it was there, in black ink, impossible to erase. On the drive home, Baba kept stealing glances at me from the front seat. "You did this. Against students born here," he said. "Raised here. In their language." I nodded, still half dazed. His voice softened. "I am proud of you, Beta." Amma, when we got home, lit a small lamp in front of the gods and made me touch the feet of both of them. "May you always stay humble," she said, her eyes shiny. For once, the memories of laughter and insults at school and kids mimicking my accent felt smaller than this moment. High school did not suddenly become a happy musical after that. There were still people who rolled their eyes when the coding teacher mentioned my name, still shoves in the hallway, still comments about quota kid, even though there was no quota. But I began to walk differently. Before, every mean word had sunk into me like a stone in water. Now, they hit something harder. A new layer of self-belief that I had started to build, line by line, like code. The next 2 years passed in a strange mix of intensity and numbness. I worked. That was my main response to everything. When a boy in the cafeteria called me a mail-order student, as a joke, I went home and perfected my solution to a dynamic programming problem. When Emma posted a picture on social media with a caption about smelly lunches, I turned my attention to learning about binary trees. It was not avoidance, exactly. It was survival. In the middle of it all, something else happened that I didn't expect. A few classmates began to respect me openly. In AP Computer Science, a girl who had ignored me for 2 years leaned over and whispered during a lab, "Hey, do you get this recursion thing? I'm lost." I explained it in my careful English. She nodded, eyes widening. "That actually makes sense. Wow. Thanks, Anya." At graduation, when we lined up in our blue gowns and caps in the gym, people wrote messages in each other's yearbooks. I didn't expect many pages in mine. But when I opened it later at home, I saw lines like, "You are the smartest person I know. Don't forget us when you are famous, lol. Thanks for helping me not fail AP Computer Science. You are awesome. I used to think you were quiet because you were shy, but actually you are just focused. Teach me please." There was cruelty in those 4 years. But there was also growth, in me, and strangely, in some of them too. College was different in the way a new planet is different from another country. I got into a state university with a strong computer science program. When I stepped onto that campus, there were still crowds and noise and English everywhere, but the energy had shifted. There were people from all over the world: China, Nigeria, Mexico, Pakistan, Brazil. I heard Hindi, Punjabi, Spanish, Arabic in one walk from the library to the dorms. No one blinked twice at my accent. Half the professors had accents themselves. In my freshman year CA's class, when I introduced myself as Anya from New Jersey, originally from Delhi, several heads nodded with automatic understanding. "I'm from Kolkata," one guy said. "Hyderabad," another added. "Not India, but my parents are from Bangladesh," a girl laughed. The old fear, "will they make fun of how I speak?" did not vanish overnight, but it quieted down. Here, being international, or immigrant, was not a weird exception. It was normal. There were still challenges. Algorithms did not care about my past. They demanded effort, hours, frustration. When I stayed up late debugging code in the lab, I sometimes remembered my lonely nights back in high school, and the two blurred together into one long path of grind. But here, when I looked up from my screen at 2 a.m., there was always someone else also struggling: an American boy with messy hair, a Chinese girl with tired eyes, a Nigerian student humming softly while he typed. We were all outsiders to the problem together. By junior year, I had an internship at a small tech company. Nothing glamorous, just a summer job building internal tools. But for my parents, it was proof that their leap into this strange land had not been in vain. You stood up to them, Amma said one evening when I came home in office clothes, my ID badge still hanging around my neck. She was cutting vegetables at the kitchen counter, the TV playing some Hindi serial in the background. To who? I asked, taking a carrot to munch. To everyone who said you don't belong, she said simply. To kids who laughed. To our relatives back home who said moving to America was foolish. To that fear inside you that wanted you to become small. I thought about it. I didn't always stand up, I admitted. Sometimes I hid. Yes, she said. But you hid and grew. Like a seed. Now look. The story could end there, with the internship, the degree, the job offer that came later from a bigger company. With the LinkedIn profile that listed me as software engineer, and the paychecks that finally allowed my parents to breathe a little easier. But it doesn't really end. Because something else happened after I graduated. Westfield High School invited me back. Not as a student, but as a speaker for their career day. The idea of going back to that building made my stomach twist. I remembered the smell of the cafeteria, the sound of lockers, the word curry, said like an insult. But I said yes. When I walked through the front doors again, the hallways looked smaller. The lockers that had once loomed over me now seemed like metal toys. Students hurried past, more interested in their own lives than in my brown face. In the auditorium, I stood on the stage behind a microphone. Rows of teenagers stared back at me with the same bored, half-curious expressions I remembered wearing at their age. Somewhere among them, I imagined, there were kids like me, new to the country, new to English, new to this loud culture that did not know how to make room for them. I'm Anya, I began, my voice steadier than it had ever been in this building. I sat where you are sitting now, not too many years ago. Back then, I was mostly scared. There were a few small laughs, the polite kind. But a few heads lifted with sharper interest. I was scared of getting lost, of saying the wrong word, of smelling wrong, of being the weird Indian girl in every room. Some days, I was so scared I wanted to disappear into the walls. I paused, feeling the old ache rise and then settle. But I also had something that those who bullied me did not understand. I had a brain that loved patterns. I had parents who, no matter how annoying they were about grades, believed I could do something with my life. And I had one teacher who let me sit in a computer lab after school, when the hallways were quiet, and build little worlds out of code where nobody could make fun of my accent. In the second row, I noticed a girl with dark hair and a backpack clutched to her chest. Her eyes were shining in a way I recognized. I'm not here to say, ignore bullying, I continued. It hurts. It is wrong. If you are going through it, tell someone. Get help. You deserve safety. But I also want to tell you this. Their words are not the whole story of who you are. I glanced at Mr. Henderson, standing near the side wall, older now, but with the same kind eyes. You can build another story, I said. Line by line. Skill by skill. Maybe in code, maybe in art, or sports, or music. You can turn all that pain into fuel. Not to burn others, but to light your own path. When I finished, there was polite clapping, then louder clapping. Some kids were already talking to each other, bored. That was okay. I hadn't come for all of them. Afterwards, as the crowd spilled out, the dark-haired girl from the second row came up to me. Her English was careful, like mine had been. Hi, she said. I'm Nisha. I came from India last year. They Sometimes laugh at me too. Her fingers twisted the edge of her sleeve. Her eyes flicked nervously around, as if watching for someone. I know, I said gently. It feels terrible. She nodded quickly, as if relieved that I did not pretend otherwise. But, I added, do you like anything here? Any class? Any club? She thought for a moment. I like math, she said. And computers. A little. I smiled. There's a coding club here. You should try it. The teacher is strict but kind. And computers. I paused, feeling the weight of years settle into a simple truth. Computers don't bully. She laughed, a small, surprised sound. What if I am not good? She whispered. What if you are? I replied. We stood there for a moment in the hallway I had once feared, two versions of the same story at different chapters. Behind Nisha, a group of boys walked past, talking loudly about a game. One of them glanced at us, then away. My heart tensed automatically, but nothing happened. Just kids, just noise. High school would still be brutal for some. Bullying would still exist. The world had not changed overnight because I had gotten a job and given one speech. But something had changed in me. I was no longer the girl who shut her tiffin under the table. I was no longer the teenager who stayed silent while someone else took credit for her work. I was a woman who had lived through the storm, learned to use its wind, and built a life with her own hands on the far shore. And if I could do that, maybe, just maybe, the next frightened immigrant kid walking into a loud, unforgiving American high school could, too.